It began with a phone call that would shake an entire city. Early in the morning, a group of hikers reported something unusual lying in the vast, silent desert outside Tehran. At first, authorities believed it was another abandoned bundle, something left behind in the emptiness. But as officers approached, the truth revealed itself. The lifeless body of a young woman, partially covered by drifting sand. Her name was Elahe Hosseinejad. From the very moment the news broke, nothing made sense. Why was she here? How did she end up alone in a place where no one should ever be? And most haunting of all, was she still alive when she was left in the desert? This was no ordinary crime scene, no clear struggle, no obvious motive, just a mystery that felt colder than the desert night itself. As investigators began their work, one thing became painfully clear. This wasn't a random tragedy. Someone wanted her gone. Someone who believed the desert would swallow every trace of her final moments. But they were wrong, because what happened to Elahe would soon spread far beyond Iran, sparking outrage, fear, and a hunt for the truth. Before her name dominated headlines, Elahe Hosseinejad lived a life like many young women in Tehran, balancing work, dreams, and the everyday pressures of modern life. Friends described her as warm, optimistic, someone who avoided conflict and always tried to lift others up. She wasn't involved with dangerous circles. She wasn't looking for trouble. That made her disappearance even more chilling. When Elahe failed to return home the night before her body was found, no one imagined the nightmare that awaited her phone suddenly went offline. Her last known messages were ordinary, nothing out of place. She simply vanished. But as detectives traced her final steps, cracks in the story began to form. There were people in her life she trusted who may not have deserved it. And there were secrets, small, quiet details that began to take on a darker meaning. Because for someone like Elahe to end up abandoned in a desert, the threat didn't come from a stranger. It came from someone much closer. And when investigators reviewed CCTV footage from her last known location, a shadowy figure appeared behind her. Security footage from a busy Tehran street captured Elahe walking calmly, unaware that someone was following just a few steps behind. Investigators replayed the footage over and over, analyzing every frame. The figure kept their distance, but never lost sight of her. At first, police assumed it was coincidence, but then the timeline matched too perfectly. Wherever Elahe went, the figure remained just within reach. Hours later, that same shadowy figure appeared in footage taken near the city's outskirts, far from where Elahe normally traveled. It was the last time she appeared alive on camera. This changed everything. Was this a stalker, an acquaintance, or someone she thought she could trust? The trail led investigators to two potential suspects, men who had crossed paths with Elahe recently, each with their own motives, each denying any involvement. But as evidence grew, one unsettling detail emerged. One of the suspects had searched online for desert locations late at night, just days before Elahe vanished. The case was no longer a mystery. It was a hunt. Both suspects were brought in for questioning. At first, they insisted they had nothing to do with Elahe's disappearance. But inconsistencies quickly surfaced. One suspect claimed he hadn't seen Elahe for weeks. Yet phone data placed him near her last known location on the night she disappeared. The other claimed he was home all evening, but neighbors reported seeing him leave in a hurry just after midnight. As investigators pushed harder, their stories crumbled. One began to sweat, stumbling over his own words. The other went silent, staring blankly at the table. What began as a missing person case was rapidly becoming a homicide investigation with two men trapped in their own lies. But the most disturbing evidence wasn't a confession. It was what forensic teams discovered next. A trace, small, almost invisible, found inside a vehicle belonging to one of the suspects' sand. The same type found at the desert site where Elahe's body was discovered. This wasn't coincidence. This was the moment truth began tearing through every lie. Forensic teams returned to the remote site where Elahe was found. Every footprint, every tire track, every small disturbance in the sand became a vital clue. As they reconstructed the final hours of her life, a horrifying theory emerged. Elahe may have still been alive when she was left there. The thought was unbearable. The desert, with its freezing nighttime temperatures and deadly silence, offered no mercy. Marks in the sand suggested she might have tried to move, even crawl, but without help, she never stood a chance. Investigators' voices trembled as they presented this possibility. This wasn't just murder, it was abandonment. A calculated decision to let the desert finish what her killer had started. This revelation changed the tone of everything. The public erupted. Outrage swept across social media. Elahe's story was no longer just a local crime. It became a symbol of injustice, a call for accountability, and a desperate plea for answers someone had to pay for what happened. And the world was watching. As the investigation deepened, motives began to surface. What had once looked like a random attack now pointed to something far more personal. Elahe had recently cut ties with one of the suspects after a tense disagreement. Friends said she seemed uneasy, as if she sensed something was wrong. Police found messages, deleted but recoverable, revealing unwanted attention, jealousy, and threats disguised as concern. The pieces fit too well. This wasn't robbery. It wasn't chance. It was obsession, the kind that grows quietly in the background, unnoticed until it becomes dangerous, and when the suspect realized Elahe wanted nothing more to do with him, his emotions turned dark. Investigators believed this motive was strong enough to drive a person to commit something unthinkable, something planned, executed, and hidden away in the desert. But there was one last piece missing: a confession. And it arrived, sooner than anyone expected. After days of interrogation, one suspect finally cracked. His voice was trembling, his hands shaking. He didn't confess entirely, but he said just enough to incriminate himself. He admitted being with Elahe that night. He admitted driving toward the desert. But he refused to explain what happened next. Investigators pressed harder, determined to uncover every detail, and as they did, the second suspect, who had remained emotionless, suddenly showed fear for the first time. It became clear the two suspects weren't just connected to Elahe, they were connected to each other. A joint plan? A cover-up? Whatever the truth was, they were running out of places to hide. Evidence, forensic analysis, and digital footprints were closing in fast, and the world waited for justice, breath held tight. But what came next shocked even seasoned investigators. As the case reached its peak, the final question remained. Would Elahe receive the justice she deserved? Authorities gathered enough evidence to charge both suspects, but the courtroom was only the beginning. Public pressure demanded answers, real answers. Why was she taken? Who delivered the final blow? And why was she left to die in the cold desert night? The world watched as prosecutors laid out the chilling details, piece by piece. Elahe's story became more than a crime. It became a voice for countless victims who never got the chance to speak. Her case forced a painful conversation about safety, violence, and the dark side of obsession. And even now, as the legal process continues, one truth remains unshakable. Elahe Hosseynejad will never be forgotten. Her story lives on, not as a tragedy, but as a reminder that silence can never bury the truth.